20 Republican Congress members may resign in the coming weeks. Let me repeat that. Up to 20 MAGA Republicans could announce their retirements before New Year's. That means potential departures like MAGA Mike Johnson could be on the way. According to a Puck News report, most retirements are coming from what were thought to be safe Republican seats, but this could put major pressure on House Speaker Mike Johnson and the GOP majority in the House. Multiple Republican lawmakers and aides say this exodus is imminent, and it could even open the door for someone like Hakeem Jeff to become the next speaker. The panic comes as Trump's approval ratings plummet nationwide, fueled by recent off-year elections in Virginia, New Jersey, Georgia, and other contests. Even a MAGA candidate barely squeaked by in the 7th Congressional District. Republican lawmakers feel their job has been reduced to defending Trump's every move, leaving them frustrated, disrespected, and worried about the party's future. U.S. layoffs are on track to exceed the great financial crisis levels. Layoffs are surging, up 40 to 54% year over year. Already, 1.1 million workers have lost their jobs, and when the full data is aggregated, that number could approach 2 million layoffs in a single year. Amid all this economic turmoil, MAGA Republican Congress members are sounding the alarm, saying, "We need to focus on affordability." Meanwhile, Trump is undermining their efforts, throwing the party under the bus and making it harder for them to defend themselves. Take Brian Fitzpatrick, a MAGA Republican, for example. Here's what he had to say about the situation.
Politically, how problematic will it be for Republicans not to figure out a solution to this?
Well, everybody's got to have an answer to rising costs across the board, whether it be healthcare or anything. This is what people voted on. I believe this is what led to Donald Trump's election in 24. I believe it's what led to Mondami's election in 25. I think affordability is the issue. That's what trumps everything else. People care about these other issues. They certainly want, us to have smart foreign policy and, all of those things. But if you're living paycheck to paycheck, which most Americans are, and you can't afford to make ends meet, nothing else matters other than that. And they want to know that people are going to have a plan to help fix that.
Has your party been making this enough of a focus? Affordability?
I don't think they have.
Because the president himself called affordability a Democratic scam this week.
I don't believe that to be true at all. No, it's real. Believe me, I hear it every day back home. Mm-hmm. It's real.
Do you find those comments problematic?
I don't know what he was intending. I mean, I've heard him say the opposite of that, that he wants to focus on affordability. I don't know where he's going with that, but I can just tell you from my standpoint, affordability is the most important issue. Mm-hmm. Issue number one.
All right, back to the story. MAGA Republican Congress members Kiley and Thomas Massie also weighed in on the situation. Here's what they had to say.
In action, in a lot of ways, the House is not in the driver's seat when it comes to key policy areas.
You have a lot of intelligent, hardworking people who gave up a lot of things to be here in Congress, only to find out that all they get to do is come here and rubber stamp whatever Donald Trump wants. Because nobody wants to be a rubber stamp. You could get a monkey to do.
Even MAGA Republican Congress member Grothman admits that if the Affordable Care Act, ACA, subsidies extension reaches the House floor, something MAGA Mike Johnson is actively trying to block, there would be enough votes to extend the subsidies, exactly what Democrats and the American people want. The stakes are urgent. As of December 8th, we are just 23 days away from the expiration of the current locked-in ACA exchange plans. Millions of Americans could lose their health coverage starting January 1st if the subsidies aren't extended. This isn't a partisan talking point. It's a real-world crisis affecting everyday people who rely on Obamacare. Meanwhile, MAGA Republicans, including Trump and MAGA Mike, keep promising a plan, but have yet to introduce anything concrete. Here's what Congressmember Grothman had to say about it.
And if a vote on subsidies does come to the House before the end of the year, does it pass the House?
I hate to guess. My guess is there are enough people there who will vote yes on anything that if it is the Democrat plan, I think it'll pass the House. I shouldn't say that, but you only need to add 3 or 4 Republicans to all the Democrats.
Now, folks, everything is coming to a head. The National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, which theoretically funds the military but often includes many other provisions, has been released and it needs to be passed soon. On the surface, the NDAA calls for about $900 billion in military spending, nearly $1 trillion. Interestingly, it refers to the Department of Defense correctly, not the Department of War, a term Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth have used unlawfully. The NDAA spans 3,086 pages, and while Americans are struggling, losing health care, facing surging prices, and living paycheck to paycheck, Congress is considering this massive defense spending. But here's the kicker. The NDAA does not include funding for military members to access IVF treatments, something that was supposed to be included. This omission highlights just how out of touch the priorities in Washington can be, even as everyday Americans face serious economic and personal challenges. Right, Donald Trump might joke about being the fertilizing president or say some other gross thing, but the NDAA stripped out the ability of our service members to get IVF coverage. MAGA Mike Johnson and MAGA Republicans view IVF as against the will of God, and they even equate it with murder. So now troops who want to start a family are being denied coverage. But that's not all. Department of Defense collective bargaining protections were removed, meaning union rights for military personnel are being rolled back. Trump has always hated unions, and this is just another reminder for anyone who still supports him. On top of that, the Road to Housing Act was also removed. This bipartisan bill was designed to address the nation's housing crisis by increasing supply, enhancing affordability, and reforming programs, a massive step forward that's now blocked. Finally, funding for CBDC initiatives was also excluded, further showing how key priorities were stripped from the NDAA while nearly $1 trillion is allocated to defense spending. House GOP hardliners had already warned that it would be a major issue if leadership failed to include a ban on the Federal Reserve issuing a central bank digital currency, CBDC, in the National Defense Authorization Act. But the Trump regime, especially Donald Trump, who holds significant crypto investments, is actually in favor of creating a CBDC. Despite this, MAGA Mike Johnson told his members back in July that the ban would be added to the bill. And once again, MAGA Mike lied. Now he'll have to deal with that backlash when Congress returns. A few more key points. Marjorie Taylor Greene has begun exposing what really goes on inside MAGA circles behind Trump's back. According to her, all of the MAGAs hate Donald Trump. They mock him. We make fun of him. Then they put on the MAGA hat, but everybody secretly hates him. She says they are too weak to admit it publicly, sell out their constituents, and act as Putin loyalists because Trump's messaging mirrors Russia's national security agenda almost word for word. Greene also claims she defended young women who were raped at age 14, and because of that, the Trump regime turned against her. She says she now receives death threats and that Trump's inner circle is determined to protect the powerful individuals named in the Epstein files. And I'm sitting here thinking, you want to protect the powerful men? What are you even talking about? Marjorie Taylor Greene is now openly calling out Donald Trump and exposing the truth about what happens behind closed doors in MAGA circles. Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent from the Trump regime was confronted with tough questions during his appearance on CBS's Face the Nation, where he struggled to defend the administration's positions and growing internal conflicts.
We hear from, for example, the president when he says that affordability is a con job by Democrats. That seems to just not be resonating with consumers that have been polled by CBS. 60% of Americans polled by this network told us President Trump makes prices and inflation sound better than they really are. And his approval rating on the economy is now down to 36% in our latest poll. On inflation, approval is even lower, at 32%. Don't you need to show that You feel the pain?
Well, Margaret, I think the president's frustrated by the media coverage of what's going on.
This is the polling of average Americans.
Yeah, but I think the average Americans, they are hearing a lot of it from media coverage. And I will tell you that the affordability has two components. There's inflation, and then there's real incomes. Real incomes are up about 1%. And what we're not going to do is say that Americans don't know what they're feeling. We've been working on it every day. I was on your show on March talking about affordability. We've made a lot of gains, but remember, we've got this embedded inflation from the Biden years.
Finally, on state-controlled media masquerading as Fox, they brought in MAGA Republican Senator McCormick, whose seat isn't up for election anytime soon since he was just recently elected. McCormick basically laid out the party's current messaging strategy. We inherited a horrible economy from Biden. And look, we made it a little better, but it's still bad. Let's be clear. Biden handed them an economy that was the envy of the world. By every measure, The Economist, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, it was a Goldilocks economy. Inflation was declining, 16 million jobs were created, and unemployment was at historic lows. And yet, according to McCormick, the message is to pretend they rescued it, when in reality, the economy has been damaged under their watch.
Think to be with the president on Tuesday, and what are you expecting the president's messages to be?
Well, I'm hoping to be with him, and I was just in Pennsylvania the last 3 days, in that part of the Pennsylvania, the northeastern part. And listen, I think the message is that we inherited a train wreck from the Biden administration, out of control inflation, an enormous regulatory state, real wage growth hadn't kept up. And we've made a lot of progress in the last 12 months with the president's agenda. Inflation is about half of what it was on average during the Biden administration. Real wage growth exceeds the inflation numbers. And you've got all sorts of things that we did right out of the gate, which is putting money in the pockets of working families, whether it's the child care tax credit or no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. So we've made a lot of progress, but there's a lot more work to do. And I think the president will lay out that agenda and how all the policies that he's put in place are going to help working families. And there's more to come, particularly in deregulation and in energy dominance.
Finally, I want to highlight this latest data point from a YouGov poll. 53% of Americans support the U.S. accepting refugees from a variety of countries, while only 19% oppose accepting any refugees at all. Contrast that with the Trump regime's current plan, which prioritizes only white South Africans as refugees, based on a completely fabricated claim of genocide against white Afrikaners in South Africa. According to the poll, just 3% of Americans support this narrow discriminatory approach. In other words, 97% of the public disapproves of the Trump plan. The numbers are stark and clear. The vast majority of Americans reject this policy.